Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Movie Date with Rob and Matt. This is a bonus episode. I'm Matt.
It's Rob. Here's Rob.
There he is. He's on the phone. He's getting his notes together.
Getting my notes
Getting
out.
his notes together.
I had a lot of notes for this.
Yeah, this is kind of a one that I'm really excited, and I'm excited that we get to talk about it. It is movie related, but it is also Matt's niche interest related.
I say, what's the point of having a podcast if you can't plug the own stuff you like?
You can't talk about the things.
I've never done that. Fan looks at the BVS episode.
The algorithm here is strong. So this will be our. This is an episode about the Gundam franchise, and the reason why is for two big primary reasons. One is, well, three really, is that Netflix has came in and says, slapped their hands together and said, hey, we want in the Gundam business. They've greenlit a live action movie that's going to be directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts. He's a big nerd for it. His Twitter presence is very Gundam heavy right now. And so to correlate with that, they also got the English language and English American release of the new animated Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway film, which has been long awaited and pushed back due to COVID. So we'll be talking about that. But they also put out the compilation films for the first series of Mobile Suit Gundam 79, the sequel film Char's Counterattack, and I have to imagine once all the right stuff is worked out, we'll get more material on there as well. Netflix has already had Gundam Unicorn and Iron Blooded Orphans.
I started watching that last night too.
Which one? IBO?
Iron Blooded Orphans. Yeah,
it's quite a show.
2 episodes in. I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a very interesting setting, and it's really brutal.
Yeah. And it's not in the Universal Century.
No, it's not. Deal. We'll talk about all that.
I knew that it wasn't because they have matrix holes on their backs.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It's set,
I don't remember that.
I don't know what timeline it's set in, but it's also set like almost 300 years after the last war they had, and so it's just like all the protagonists in Gundam have all been kids, but they all are like 15-year-olds who are designed to be like 25.
Yeah.
These are actually like child soldiers. Essentially, what becomes Tekkadan, the group that's in IBO, I mean, they're just essentially like, hey, we unionized and we got a Gundam, and we're just gonna kill people for money. It's like, all right, it's pretty rough. I'm pretty unimpressed with the mech designs in that show, except for the Barbatos. The Barbatos is a really cool looking Gundam.
Yeah.
They also announced a arcade PC game that's essentially Gundam Overwatch.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a hero fighter shooter. Looks great. It's called Gundam Evolve, and the Barbatos is essentially gonna be the big bruiser. Definitely looks like a lot of fun. That'll be out next year. So
we're talking about Mobile Suit Gundam, baby.
Yeah, Rob's been getting everything together. I brought a friend. I brought Haro.
Oh yeah.
This is one of the first Gunpla I built starting last year when the pandemic began hitting. I used to be a builder when I was a kid, and now I've gotten back into it in a big way when my finances allow.
Yeah.
So I brought Haro, who's absent in a lot of the Netflix stuff right now, except for the original series. He's kind of the mascot of the Gundam franchise, other than, obviously, the titular robots themselves.
Yeah. Which is a good segue into our first section of this, which is the original Mobile Suit Gundam series.
The films.
The films,
there are differences, obviously, between the 2-hour-long movies and the original 49-episode series.
Yeah.
But we brought Haro along because he's a friend to the children and to angry boy robot pilots who need therapy. There's not a lot of... I feel like the crews on all these ships need to have an appointed therapist. That would solve a lot of problems.
You're probably right. What do you think? I'm just curious because I want to know. What do you think my reaction was to all this?
I think it's probably going to be similar to a lot of folks, which is like, I see the appeal. It's quite dated, but interesting nonetheless. And I can see how this was like a big deal back when it came out. And more modern takes on it, much like you can see the animation difference from 79 to 88 when Char's Counterattack came out versus the ones you've seen like Gundam Wing or 8th MS Team or things like that. It's like the original first Gundam, as they call it. It was a great springboard for a franchise that has only improved on itself leading up to something like Hathaway that looks legitimately gorgeous.
Yeah. I'm going to try to summarize. You're kind of close. I'm going to try to summarize my...
Because this is the first experience with the series.
I'm going to summarize my view on the first series.
Okay.
Like this.
So you tell me, like, as you've watched them, what you picked up from the story.
I'll go through a couple of my notes, and then I'll give my feelings on the overall, like, how I view it legacy-wise and all that stuff.
Cool.
I said... a couple notes. That's not how space works. Side 1 was turned into a Zeon strike base. Zeon are dicks. After they basically committed a genocide of some sort, they just like, we're going to use this as our base of operations. There's a super weird romance meet cute about a dead swan.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
I have dude backhands Mirai. We're all okay with it.
Oh, yeah. That, yeah. We'll get to talking about Slegger.
Music. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And then I have...
Soldiers of Sorrow.
And then I also have... the story starts off very grounded, descends into some sort of overkill by the end of it.
Okay.
A good example of that would be the first time we see a Zaku inside of side 6.
Side 6
is where Amuro's
Side
is at.
7. I don't recall.
I think it is side 7.
It's
but the first time we see
and the
one,
thing is, like, this is going to come up in when I briefly go over Zeta Gundam. Yeah. Is that also starts in side 7? But think about like the sides as like a county, and they're different colonies in a side.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, it's like side 6, this. But, yeah, so it starts there.
But it starts there.
What you need to know is side 3 is Zeon. That's the one that's beyond the moon, and that's all Zeon.
Yeah. And we should also point out, like, Zeon opens the forces of Zeon, led by Char, lead what is essentially a terrorist attack against Side 7 or whatever?
Essentially.
Yeah.
Side 7 is a neutral colony. So, like, when the war broke out...
Real dicks.
Yeah.
Real bummers.
So, to kind of lay the groundwork for anybody who's just popping in to hear this...
Oh, yeah, we should probably talk about a long time ago, one of the sides decided it was an independent from the rest of them.
We're almost 100 years after mankind has sort of eased population problems and climate change issues by essentially jettisoning millions of people into space,
which
space
is a
colonies.
plot point that we abandon in later series, which I'll get back to.
It's for the whole thing being about
mankind is ruining everything.
Right.
Use our technology to create artificial environments in space. What if we do that for Earth? Don't worry about it.
Char's whole thing is going to get really complicated for that. So almost 100 years in, Side 3, as farthest from the Earth, behind the moon, goes extremist with these points of view of like, hey, the Earth Federation that kind of runs Earth and the space colonies is really tyrannical. They're very lazy. They're very bloated and corrupted. We want independence. We want to be seen as
they
not
secondhand from the Union.
Yeah, well, and also
the Principality of Zeon.
Yeah, because we'll talk about the whole thing that gets talked about a lot with like space Nazis.
Yeah,
the Zeon are not necessarily space Nazis.
No, in fact, the fascist references are often very light. Mm-hmm. There's only a handful of moments where I was like that's a yikes moment.
Well, there's the whole scene where Degwin talks to Giran, and Degwin, the sovereign, is like, have you ever heard this guy named Hitler? And Giran's like, sounds like a pretty cool dude. It's like, all right, we get it. But the Principality of Zeon are basically monarchists. It's basically
that's why they all dress like Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah, it's very Prussian. Yeah. All their outfits and everything are very Prussian.
I would say they're sort of more like proto-authoritarian or something. Yeah. I wouldn't say they're all-out fascists because they haven't tried to ethnic cleanse anybody or anything like that.
There's no...
But they have committed like what I would call war crimes.
Yes, everyone's doing war crimes.
Yeah.
So
I would say the Federation isn't blameless either.
Not at all.
But if you have to do like the lesser evil, it's probably the Federation.
Well, it's the big colony drop that kind of comes back literally through the whole series. So eventually the Federation... the Principality of Zeon declares itself independent. builds up an armada and declares war against the Earth Federation. In the first week, like millions of people die because they're just indiscriminately using nukes and gases. And eventually, in order to try to destroy the Federation headquarters, they drop an entire space colony on Earth, and it misses the point because the space noids from there don't understand gravity. Gravity comes up a lot, and it ends up landing on Australia and obliterating Australia. And causing more catastrophic climate disasters and things. So we're now several months into the war. It's a stalemate. Zeon have the upper hand because they have developed mobile suits, which are giant, 18 meters tall, man-powered robots with weapons. With weapons that are incredibly powerful. But Federation has
the Federation has put their best
plan.
minds. They're having their Oppenheimer moment or whatever, where they have to find a way to end the war. I don't want this episode to run too long, so I'm going to kind of run fast and loose.
And I won't try to be too
it's
chatty
fine.
Cathy on it.
It's fine, but like I want to get to the things that I actually like.
Yes.
The animation is dated, but I found myself liking it more and more as the show went on. Whereas in like the first episode, I feel like they were still like, "What is animation? Can we animate?" And it's a lot of like Zeon space, like mobile suits floating over a background that there's clearly 2D things that are being.
Yes.
So it's like
you can see the star patterns like sweeping across, like it's very clearly a cell, an animation cell. Just
and
being
then
pulled
like
across
as it goes on, it gets a lot better. For example, the first time I really noticed it was when they're in like kind of, I don't remember what it is. It's in the I'm pretty sure it's in the first movie or at the beginning of the second when they're in like a Grand Canyon type area and they're having a battle against like them and White Base are having a big battle against like some of Char's forces. And the animation was starting to get more fluid and a little more ambitious as to like how you can utilize these things in the battle. In a weird way, I might like this more than I like Char's counterattack. But I want to get back to the idea that like as the story begins,
and I want to throw some in. A lot of this has to do with like a lot of people kind of agree that the first series, the first 49 episodes or so, used a lot of repeated animation, a lot of dated animation. The compilation movies when they came out the year after that, this came out about 1980. Cleaned up a lot of that, added new animation, and so it is an improvement literally on the source material.
Okay, well that's good for them.
Limited improvement, but
so we open with Char leading some sort of terrorist attack on Side 7. Amuro is just a kid, and they get the alert they have to get out of there and stuff. And like I love how like I do appreciate in my opinion, the very prescient argument of like they're like that these terrorists are coming here and like all we want is independence from X amount. It's like, but while I'm here, I should probably kill all these people. Like one guy just goes rogue, and just starts killing people.
Well,
I was like,
you always have your psychopath in a robot who's just like, and there's like, hey, Gene, chill out. We gotta blow up these robots.
And so
Char discovers that they're doing the V project, and he's like,
which is they're making mobile suits,
right? And Char is this
apparently
mysterious
only one mobile suit.
Well, there's the gun tank
later.
and the gun cannon, but they get wiped out pretty quick. And Char is this mysterious young man in a silver mask.
He's known as the Red Comet. He's their Red Bear, and he's their ace pilot or whatever.
He wiped out a lot of dudes in the first battle and all that. And
who has a vendetta against Zeon, or does he? Or does he later abandon it? Are you trying to see some of my conflicts here?
He's got a secret agenda against the Zabi family, who are the Zeon royalists who are in charge.
The way I see the Zabi family is sort of how I see like the communists who came after like Karl Marx or something, because Zeon Daikun was Char's father, essentially, who founded the Principality of Zeon.
He founded Zeon as a concept. He founded the philosophy of like humanity is meant to go to space. We're meant to evolve. We're going to become something new.
He was a futurist.
Yeah,
he predicted new types.
Futurist.
He predicted like new types would happen. Also, what is a new type? What do they do?
This is one of the most both interesting and bullshit things in the entire series, to the point where the creator Yoshiyuki Tamino almost is just like, I'm sorry I came up with the idea of new types, but because it much like the Force in Star Wars, it has become this thing that
Overly
the entire
explained.
culture latches onto. In the original series, new types are only mentioned once or twice. For the most part, in the Japanese, they call them espers. And they say, oh, you might be a psychic. You might be an esper. After the series came out, fans latched on to the new type concept. So a lot of conversations about new types, those were added into the movie. They were not in the original series.
Yeah.
That is something that is kind of weird.
There is something that could have been interesting there, but it became this vague thing. It was like they're just better at because we say
They're
because
psychics. It's essentially they have a sixth sense. They can
They have
kind of
psychics, but they can also like communicate with the dead, or can they?
yeah.
There's a lot of-
We'll get to that.
there's a lot
That
of that.
plays into it later when we talk about
Yeah.
Char's counterattack.
But the thing I appreciated the most about this story, if I had to like summarize it, is Amiro's very real reaction to being in war.
Mm-hmm.
He goes through PTSD, I'm sure, but like he gets like 1,000-yard stare at one point. He doesn't want to leave his room, and then Bright Noah just kicks down his door, like, get in the goddamn
Get in the robot.
get in the room, I can kill people. Like, also it is deeply, it's unexplained, but like they just sort of like they explain it, but they just sort of hand wave it away as like everyone on this, like everyone on the white base is just like they're refugees from Side 7 and are now just conscripted into the war.
Yep.
And I was very much like, why are these kids on this ship?
Yep.
Get those kids off that ship.
It's
now.
like you can't just be like all the professional people died, and so we brought
all the
a bunch
good
of
soldiers are dead, so all we have left are like children and old men.
They do have this brief little moment when they meet with before they make it to Earth, when they stop by on Luna 2, the asteroid, and they meet with Admiral Tiananmen.
Yeah.
And Tiananmen in the original show is a lot more of a dick. He gets kind of changed in this translation, and his whole thing is like, all right, well, you all now are privy to like top secret military material, and technically you are all sort of committing a mutiny. If you are to abandon, we'll execute you for mutiny.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Like they're like, we'll just execute you for betrayal. Like, and I'm talking to you, Captain Bright. Like, and you know, like you got to stick with it. You're the only ones who know how to run this thing, and we'll keep an eye on you.
I will say by the end of the
Again, the Federation are kind of dicks as well. There's
Yeah.
no good guys.
there are no good guys.
It's just survival.
Eventually, the morally gray lends itself to like. I feel like by the end of this whole series, including Hathaway and Char's, I feel like when we get to the end, I am like, because these are all sequels. They're all like in order canonically or whatever. I feel like by the time we've gotten to the end of it, I'm like, nobody even knows what they're fighting for anymore. I think that's my. If I have an overarching critique, that's what it is. But I will say, by the end of these first three movies,
I think Tomino would agree with you.
Yeah, the original Mobile Suit Gundam. By the end of those, I was like, you know what? I actually really like all these characters. They're a big family. At the end, when they're like, oh, is Amuro gonna get out of that big? What do they have a big fight around
At a Bawaku.
Yeah,
at
that's right.
the last Xeon standoff
Yeah,
point.
and they have also they kind of. There's a couple nods to Star Wars in it that I really liked, with like big super weapons and stuff.
The colony laser and all that.
So when but when like Amuro is floating and they're trying to catch him before he floats off into the endless void of space and stuff, like they're all on this little lifeboat dinghy, and I felt like, man, I really like these guys. They're all kind of a little group together. I like Mirai and Fra and Bright and all these people.
You feel bad when Ryu dies because it's like Ryu's kind of like this cool big brother.
Yeah,
and
he dies in just like an airplane. He
sacrifices himself to make sure that Crowley Hammond doesn't blow up the Gundam because they sort of killed Aunt Rambaral, who's also one of my favorite characters.
He's really cool. I'll get to some of my favorite Xeon characters as well.
Yeah.
I also liked. I don't know if I liked him because he felt really tagged on. They have like, I can't remember the character's name, but he's the guy that backhands Mirai. He's like
Slegger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still don't understand the decision about Slegger.
He just shows up and then they kill him.
In the show, he's around just a touch longer, not even that long, and he's sort of this brash, very American-coded guy who sort of fills in once they go to space. It's like after they leave Jaburo in South America, they're like, "Hey, my name's Slegger Law, and I'm an ace pilot, and I'm a big swinging dick here now."
Yeah,
he's brought in to be this weird, clumsy love triangle thing between him, Mirai,
And
and
Bright.
Bright, and Cameron when they
Yeah, I
meet
guess
up
that's true.
with Cameron, who is Mirai's estranged fiance.
I'm gonna make a sweeping cultural generalization. Prepare for the hot take.
You probably are not going to be very wrong about that.
The Japanese, as far as like their cinematic writing, don't understand romance.
Well, okay.
and how to that's the edgelord take. Rather, my actual take is like I feel like in a lot of anime, particularly in these series, they set up a type of quasi romance and then they just drop it. Or they set up a romance that to me feels very stilted and not real.
Well, and I think there is something like we see Mirai and Bright's relationship grow rather organically.
Yeah, that's the one that I was kind of like, I like that.
And we also see Amuro and Fra's relationship decay over time.
Yeah.
Where she's
Because
realizing
he likes the redhead, the redhead woman who dies.
Oh yeah,
She's
no,
the
well, yeah,
commander.
he has a. Everyone has a. Everyone in the show has a crush on.
Even what's his name, the cowardly guy who's
Kai.
skinny, and he has a romance episode.
Kai's growth in the series is one of my favorite.
It's good.
things.
It's all right.
It's his. See what's.
He's the Theon
I'm very happy
Greyjoy.
to talk about Kai when we talk about Zeta briefly, because this isn't the last time you see Kai in the franchise.
Yeah.
I'll give you a wrap up of that when we get there before we talk about Char, his counterattack. But yeah, Kai has this whole moment when they make it to. They really cut through the parts in Belfast really fast.
Yeah.
Belfast was originally like a whole battle sequence, and they brought in like these new marine type mobile suits and all that. And this young woman named Miharu gets on board. She's a Xeon spy, and she's kind of a spunky brat. And Kai's also a spunky brat, and they kind of really hit it off a little bit. And he's like, "All right, I'll help you, yeah," and all that. And he's always been an asshole since the beginning.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be there.
No, but he's good at his job.
I can't blame him either.
Right.
Like,
and also like we're not hoorahing for the Federation either. It's just like, but he's just like, yeah, this is all junk, man. He's got a Roger Klotz kind of vibe going on.
yeah,
And but he loses Miharu in an accident.
Yeah.
And it completely destroys him, but it makes him it hardens him. It makes him into like, I've got a purpose to see this my survival through. Yeah.
I feel like, and maybe in the original series, I can only judge on what I saw, but like
Which you're getting most of it. I
in
mean,
the movie,
not
like,
too much is cut.
Amuro's relationship with his father doesn't. It feels like this in the movie. We literally just find him on Earth, or not on Earth.
They stop off
stop in another colony.
one of the other colonies, and
He's there, and he's insane or whatever.
He's got space madness,
and then he just leaves. And I was like, that was an opportunity for some sort of character arc depth thing that was just like he meets his dad's dick, and he leaves again. And I was like, oh, all right.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
That's literally just what happens. He meets up with Tim again.
I feel like there's a lot of good
Now,
stuff
remind me,
here.
the movie kept the whole scene when he meets his mother. That's a little more impactful.
Yeah, I agree, because that's when she sees the impact of wars had on him, and he like has to kill two Xeon soldiers walk into the bedroom or whatever.
Walk into the encampment that they're at.
And they're like, we heard there was a Federation
he just
soldier
like,
here. In fact, one of the Xeon soldiers is actually like quite like genial or nice. He's kind of like, if you guys just help us with our job and we're gonna get out of your hair or whatever.
And
like,
that's also juxtaposed earlier when he goes to his house and it's just like surrounded with drunk Federation officers.
yeah, there's assholes everywhere. In
Yeah.
fact, I actually like Ramba Ral is his name, Rawl
Yes,
or whatever.
Ramba Ral.
Yeah, he's really cool. There's also a weird like homoerotic bromance between Garma and Char.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Like that hasn't been a thing that people have been talking about for 40 years.
And then he betrays him.
Char, the Char armor, the Char Garma thing is really interesting because Garma, like if you're looking at the Zabi family, it's kind of like literally both in their design and in their morals, like a sliding scale of ugliness to like beauty. And Garma's the youngest. He's this very Bishonen, handsome guy who's always twirling his hair and everything. And he's
covering one of his eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like kind and like efficient, good to
He
his
is
men.
ostensibly the best proto-fascist in the
Right.
show.
He's the proto-fascist that we deserve.
He's lawful neutral, is what I would call him.
And he's very aristocratic, and him and Char's relationship goes back like before the war starts, but it's kind of this very Shakespearean sort of thing where it's like, yes, my friend, but I have to kill you to get to the top, and then like
Does he though?
Well,
I didn't care because I don't particularly care for Garma or whatever.
Right.
Because
You don't get much of
because
him,
that
so.
point I'm invested in Amuro and his growth. And I'm gonna cycle back to the beginning real quick.
Blame this on the misfortune of your birth, Garma.
Yeah. A criticism that I have is like Gundams seem extremely powerful and unique, and then by the end of the show, they're cannon fodder. Like, one thing I like in this show is when he pilots the Gundam for the first time and he's trying to figure it out, and he uses the beam sword, and it is just like it's a devastating weapon or whatever, and he cuts through like two Zaku's. I think he kills. And when they, I can't remember who's like the big ugly guy who they kill at the end. He's one of the Jabi family.
Oh, Dozel?
Yeah, that's him. He's like, you lost how many mobile suits? He's like two, like two. Losing 2 mobile suits is like a death blow.
Dozel's also one of my favorite characters. He gets a lot of like extra story kind of stuff. Like he's this family man.
He was all right.
He's a big dad to his soldiers. He's kind of like the big like hawk guy. He's like, I love war, and he's like, he looks like he's 9 feet tall and just and he brings out the big Zam.
Yeah, I don't like. Oh yeah, that's right. He uses that, and it's like eventually the Gundam gets to a point where it's either too unstoppable that it loses all sort of balance for me, and like we get to the point where Gundams and mobile suits are being destroyed so quickly. Like I like the idea that one mobile suit is and there's a great scene in Hathaway that shows that one mobile suit to a civilian population is a very scary proposition.
Because for the most part in the first series, aside from the beginning, they're mostly battling in unoccupied areas.
Yeah.
Like Earth is pretty vacant.
In fact, there is a second battle when they're trying to do the re-entry to Earth or whatever, and Char tries to attack them. And they think that Amuro's Gundam is going to burn up on re-entry, and it doesn't. Essentially.
That Zaku does, though.
Which is really cool. But like that's the first time that Amuro has gotten better at using the Gundam, and Char is frustrated.
Well, there's a point later
and it's really good because he's like, it shows what the power of one of these things can be. And I feel like when you lose that kind of small focused fight to like a big fight that you get near the end, it becomes a little overkill.
Well, and they even comment on it, and I don't remember if they comment on it much in the film. I know they do it in the series, is that they start saying Amuro's ability, like as his new type abilities start developing, he has grown more powerful than the Gundam itself. Like the Gundam is now antiquated to his ability. Like it can't keep up with him now.
Yeah.
Like it's like a race car that's too old and the driver's just too good for it.
Yeah.
So essentially by the end it's falling apart under the weight of his performance.
Yeah. And then when we get to Char's, that's why he has to have the new Gundam
right.
in Char's counterattack or whatever. There's a lot of great stuff here, and it's just kind of marred by, I think, ill thought out writing and just like bunch of little things.
I think you're right about that.
But I found myself really appreciating and enjoying the battles because like the first 30 minutes was a bit of a chore at times because like, oh, this is real speed racery. Like this is real hard to watch sometimes. And then as it kind of kept going on, I really started to enjoy it. I liked a little bit of the politics and stuff. One of the things that I don't, maybe it's because we've been spoiled by such great content now, when you watch a show like The Expanse or whatever that has really interesting politics and geoplanetary politics would probably be more accurate.
Because I think The Expanse comes pretty close to like the same situation that Gundam kind of has.
Yeah, and like
because there's no aliens here. It's all just.
I feel like what they needed me in the room just asking questions while they wrote the screenplays.
Why do you need that?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Get rid of this American character. You don't need
why
him.
is Slugger here?
Yeah.
This is useless.
We're like, what does Zeon really want?
Yeah.
To be left alone? Then why are they killing all these people?
Like, what does Zeon? What does Zeon want?
Yeah, maybe show and you can show that they're idiots. They don't know what they want. That like a lot of times. Fascism is a amorphous ideology that's very hard to pin down because
it's a snake that eats itself. It always needs an enemy, and that's the thing about the zombies is you see that all of them are plotting against one another.
Yeah,
that's why by the end
one literally assassinates.
Yeah,
her
by
brother.
the end, like Girin, who essentially wants to become Space Hitler, uses the planetary weapon to kill his father, and General Revel, the leader of the forces, kills the 2 old men of the series.
Yeah.
Then during the final battle,
His
Cassilia assassinates him.
Yeah.
And then Char assassinates Cassilia pretty brutally.
Yeah.
But then, Dozle just kind of gets killed in the crossfire because
He dies like a man as far as he's concerned.
And weirdly, like a giant demon ghost pops up behind him. I still don't understand what that's about. Tomino said it's like his fighting spirit.
Yeah.
Whatever, man.
My point is like fascism was a political ideology that didn't exist in the books. A lot of political ideologies were written down and theorized before they were really enacted, going all the way back to like people like Plato and Aristotle.
Right, but fascism is an invention of the industrial era.
Yeah, well, my point is like it's amorphous and it manifests itself in a lot of different ways, and usually its telltale signs are like, you are fighting against an enemy, the Jews, and in the Nazis' case, that is simultaneously incredibly powerful and all-knowing, but also pitiful and weak in their vermin or whatever.
Right.
And it usually has to do with more loyalty to the party than any sort of economic belief.
Fascism has no care for like tax law or like it's all about strong military, strong borders, and a forever war against an enemy, which eventually, when you run out of enemies, you start finding enemies in your allies.
Yeah.
That's why fascism eats itself.
And a belief in manifest destiny and greatness from like your destiny is
because what did you
tied to your culture.
Speaking of that,
but
what did you
Zeon
take
has
from,
no political philosophy,
right?
Which makes it frustrating and hard for me to define.
Like one of the big iconic moments in the series is the speech that Giran gives. Which, by the way, take your sorrow and turn it into anger.
When I watched that was the first moment I got to appreciate the interconnectedness, because Shiro Amada watches that speech in 8th MS Team
at the beginning of the series. Because that speech kind of, in all like side story stuff, is sort of like this big marker point that the war is turning. Yeah. Because it's after it's the Garma's funeral scene, and essentially he gives the big Seek Zeon, Hail Zeon speech, and it's just like, rise my people, but he doesn't talk about, he's just like, we are a divine force, God will not abandon us. Yeah.
That's the closest it comes to like overt fascism.
Yes. And I think it's because Giran in the zombies, and I mean, we talk about the zombies because they're only really centric to this, to the first series. Yeah. They do come up later, and I'll explain that. But each one has a different point of view. And that's the problem when you have a ruling family, is families don't think by themselves. They are individuals, and that's why all these family members are betraying one another, is because they all have different ways. Like Sovereign Degwin goes to Revel to say, let's end this war before more people get killed. This is ridiculous. And Giran's like, I want this war to continue.
Well, he's the most radical.
Yes.
Whereas someone like Dozle probably doesn't have great political. Like, I don't get the sense that he is politically invested.
No, he's invested in his family.
He's invested in his career and in his family, essentially. Garma literally threatens to leave, essentially, which I feel like is the one reason I was like, well, why did you kill him? If you're like anti-Zeon as it exists now, but is it though? Like, did Garma kill your father?
Garma was a child when that happened. Garma was as old as you are, Char. Yeah. We need to bring up Sayla also.
Oh yeah, because she is his sister.
Yes, and is kind of
doesn't know when she sees him or whatever.
She's kind of the secondary protagonist of a lot of it, and I'll talk about that.
I thought she was good. I just didn't have a lot to say about her.
Yeah, and that's because Sayla's voice actress in the original series kind of left the whole deal for various reasons, and that sidelined Tomino's storyline where Sayla was meant to be like this big major character through the rest of the franchise. Yeah. And after they lost her, she got sidelined immediately. And I think they were all just like, okay, what do we do now? Because Sayla was meant to be like this very important character, and she is important in the first half, but then kind of you get the feeling she's meant to be important, but the show and the franchise doesn't support that. Yeah. And it kind of sucks. I guess we're getting close to wrapping this. I got one more plot thing I want to talk about. Yeah. Is what did you think of the whole Lala thing between Char, Lala, and Amuro? Lala's the
Oh, yeah, I remember.
the
That's the romantic meet cute with the dead
yes,
swan.
the,
that I was
the
like,
woman who
what
is
is
sort
happening?
of Indian coded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My first feeling was like, why is this happening? And I was like, I just feel like the meet cute is weird. It's like I said, I'm not trying to be like the Japanese don't understand romance, but like
Because it's very poetic. It's like, I think that swan is going to die, and she predicts it and is like, I am connected to it and everything. And Amuro's like, what?
I just feel like it's an example of like just a good example is like I feel like as these series have gone on, they've gotten probably a little bit smarter and they've got a little more hip to like what a modern audience wants. My biggest thing I hate in anime is like I hate these kind of like light coded romances, wink wink or whatever, that never happen. And I'm like, so fucking dumb.
So you don't care for the tsundere thing of just like, oh, you're stupid, get out of my way, and she blushes.
Which one is that?
That's
When is that?
tsundere is the idea of like the romantic connection is antagonistic, and so usually the girl is like calling the male protagonist an idiot. And it's just
that's what happens in Gundam Wing. It's like, I'll fucking kill you. Whatever.
Yeah, I guess Hero is a little bit of a tsundere. It's more prominent in something like Evangelion with the character of Asuka.
Yeah, but the general idea is that like two people clearly have some like connection, and then we're not going to do anything.
There is it's a strange chastity in a lot of. It's weird because a lot of like popular like shonen manga and anime are very sexually like provocative and like
you mean like
fan
with
service.
big boobs and booties?
Yeah, but they're also highly chaste. Like no one gets laid, and so it's like
there's a whole separate genre for that.
Right, but there's a difference between like pornography versus like an R-rated like seinen series. I mean, like people fucking Cowboy Bebop, but that's rare.
But we assume,
right?
Because of course they do.
And I mean, we do know eventually Mirai and Bright do because Hathaway
we must
exists.
assume. I
Hathaway
assume they grew a baby in the test
right
tube.
in the
so I don't know. It just bothers me, and
well, and also it's so weird because the Lala thing after Amuro accidentally kills her in the mobile armor, that sets off this like where Char and Amuro are no longer just rivals, but now their hatred for each other grows into something deeper.
But I don't even notice if like Char likes her in that way or whatever. Is it a romance thing, or is it like she was my friend, or she was gifted and could have helped me militarily? It just feels
it's very ambiguous.
Yeah,
you don't really know. There's
I just want to like grab
Char's
the writers and be like, it's okay to admit that characters liked each other, right?
Well, and also like it's a weird thing because Lala is coded to be quite young.
Yeah.
And like Char throughout the franchise is always kind of sidelined with these younger women. Yeah. And it's you'll notice obviously you notice that in Char's counterattack.
Yeah, and I also I think I liked the idea like, oh, Char gets a new type to balance out the other new type or whatever. Right. I like that, but like I'll give it a 6. I'll give that thing a 6.
Yeah. That whole imagery keeps coming back. So yeah, you got any other thoughts about parts of the show?
Not on this one, no. I quite liked it. I think it's worth a watch if you like anime and you want to see the beginning of like a craze. This was good. I think by the end it gets overkill and like too complicated, and this is where like
it rushes to the end pretty fast.
I don't know if it rushes to the end, but it throws so much in the air.
Yeah, the last movie is a big rush to the finish and cuts out quite a bit of the show. There's more mobile armor shenanigans. There's a whole scene on a desert Texas colony where Amuro fights Mukuve, the effete Zeon guy with the vase. Yeah, he fights him in a special mobile suit that's cut out entirely. Yeah, he kills him in the Gyan, which is like a mobile suit that looks like a fencing fighter. It has like a big fencing sword and a shield full of missiles. Yeah. It's a cool design, but it's only used once.
Yeah. Let's talk about Char's counterattack.
Okay. Well, I want to quickly cover like what happens in between.
Oh, I don't know if there is anything in between.
Oh, yes. There's two 40 to 50 episode series in between. Oh. So I want to kind of give you a little bit of like, so you really like these characters. What happens to them? Yeah. Because when you get Char's counterattack, you just really see, Amuro, Bright, and Mirai. So what happened to everybody?
Mirai is like getting groceries.
Yes, with Shaman, her daughter. And what happened to the kids? What happened to Kika Cats and Let's, who were a delightful trio running around.
No, get rid of them. Write them out.
They cut out a really good scene in Jaburo where the kids like they run off from a daycare they're kept in, and and they're the ones that kind of.
Oh yeah, they discover there's bombs being planted. That's in the movie.
There's more of that in their like reconnaissance. Like they have this little moment where they show their value, where they're like, if they weren't there to find out what happened, everybody would have died.
Again, I'd like to point out Zeon is like placing bombs, and they like kill like bunch of people, bunch of children.
Well, they didn't know the children were there, but they were still going to do it.
Yeah. But like, I just feel like
those frog suit guys.
Yeah. Oh, I don't like those mobile suits either.
I'm a big
weird.
fan of the.
They look weird. And I don't like them.
I like the marine type mobile suits a lot. So the Akai, the little bear looking one, that kind of has a meme now because a lot of people thought it looked cute.
Yeah.
So now it's like gets memed a lot in Japan as being adorable. And in one of the children's series, there's one that's literally designed to look like a bear. And it's called the Bear Guy.
Cool.
So. Zeta Gundam. Briefly wrap it up. Zeta Gundam. Takes place in 0087. Between the end of the war, Principality of Zeon dies, essentially. All the Zabi family's dead. Zeon collapses and becomes the Republic of Zeon. Essentially, like, it's like a post-war quelling. In between, the Earth Federation becomes really dogmatic about erasing all elements of Zeon, like, nationalism or Zeon activity. And a few like protests and activists and terrorist attacks lead them to create a counterinsurgency group called the Titans. This is briefly mentioned in Char's counterattack where Char talks about the Titans. It's the Titans.
Yeah.
And the Titans were essentially, you want to talk about space fascists, these are space fascists. They are ethnic cleansers of space noids, and they essentially become so powerful they override the Federation and are run by psychopaths. And they get a bunch of whole new mobile suits.
Should probably find a way to deal with that.
Yeah, they get a whole bunch of mobile suits. They steal a lot of like new type soldier experiments for cyber new types, which is mentioned in Char's counterattack. And in the meantime, a group called the Anti-Earth Union Group, or AUG, is formed out of that, built on former Federation officers and Zeon officers. This is where Char returns, this time going under the name Quattro Bagina. He trades out the mask for a pair of sick Ray-Ban sunglasses, and he's kind of a good guy. Like, he's kind of like the leader of this group. He's one of the secondary main characters of this series. The other is another traumatized 15-year-old who gets a Gundam named Camille Badan.
But where is Amuro?
Amuro at that time is a war hero who is treated like an animal by the Federation. He's kept on a highly secured mansion in Wyoming, and essentially just does is like a test fight pilot, like for tourists. And they keep him there because they don't trust him. He's a new type. He's dangerous.
That's no bueno.
But he eventually breaks out and joins AUG and gets a couple of new mobile suits. But that's where he meets up with Char again. And so you get that moment where like we fought together. This is when they fought together. They fought against the Titans together.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great moments in Zeta where the two just like talk about what happened. Like, and they're amiable, but their hatred is still there for each other. But Char, the leaders of the AUG eventually start getting killed off, and the last one says, Char, Quattro, you need to become the leader. And he eventually takes over for AUG and is like, we have to, defeat the Titans and stop all this tyranny from happening because the Titans are committing war crimes and all this other stuff. Camille is the hyper new type who gets involved in all this. They got a whole crew. There's a new base called the Argrama that's Bright eventually becomes captain of. He's back. And we learn about what happens to some of the other characters. Kai is now a reporter. He's like an independent reporter who has like this cool Indiana Jones moment.
Fight the power.
He wears like a slick white suit and like goes to Jaburo and like is like he's got like a whip and is like Indiana Jonesing these Titans officers. So he's kind of like a spy, but he's an independent reporter. Fra and Hayato get married.
Which one was Hayato again?
Hayato's the little guy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Fra and Hayato get married.
I remember that. They have a little moment when he gets hurt at the end of, that's not bad.
Yeah, Fra's just like, well, Amuro's like totally gone, so what's up, Hayato? They adopt the children. They adopt Kika, Cats, and Let's.
Precious.
Katz becomes a angry little brat who eventually joins the Argrama as a pilot. Hayato works in Florida as like at Kennedy Space Center as like the head of the museum there. He's actually using it as a front for a AU sub organization. So he's also like a militia guy. The series ends in a rather dramatic moment that gave Tomino the name Kill 'Em All. His nickname is Kill 'Em All Tomino because he loves killing off characters, and it really starts in Zeta. Pretty much 50% of the cast in Zeta dies in the last 2 episodes, both Titans members and Federation and AUG. Yeah. Katz gets killed, so one of the orphans dies.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, he's like flying a fighter pilot and gets hit by an asteroid, and it's like no. This is where they go all out on new type stuff. Everybody's talking to each other as ghosts. So many space ghosts. I'm not going to get into it all. Yeah. We briefly see Sayla for like a second. Bye, Sayla, you're gone. But it's mostly the Char show. And
I don't dislike Char's character. I just think all this sounds cool, and then I am imagining like the hard right turn that's about to come with Char's counterattack.
Oh, well, what is also happening at this time is towards the end of the end of the war, what's called the Grips conflict, it takes place in this colony area called Grips. The Titans have now been completely wiped out except for this guy from Jupiter named Paptamishirako. He's like this.
How are you from Jupiter?
So,
Jupiter is a gaseous planet. There is no surface.
There is no surface. It's mentioned in it that there's a Jupiter fleet that carries helium gas that's needed for like fuel. So there's a like essentially like a trucking line that goes from Jupiter, collects helium gas from Jupiter, and brings it back. And it's like a neutral sort of organization. That's what they mean. Like, he's from a part of that. He's also a very powerful psychic and manipulates women really easily because misogyny. He becomes leader of the Titans. Outside, far away, after the war ended, Dozel's daughter, Minerva, was spirited away off to this colony called Axis.
Yeah, I remember that.
Do you get it?
I get
Axis. This big Axis comes back in Char's counterattack.
Yeah. It's a giant asteroid.
Yes, it's a giant asteroid. This is where all the Zeon remnants went and formed Axis Zeon and built a gigantic fleet and essentially bolstered this little girl to become like their de facto leader and manipulated her into being like, we have the true sovereign of Zeon. And she's just like a kid who's being brainwashed by these adults, particularly this woman named Haman Karn. And Haman is sort of the secondary villain. And Char wants to kill her to end Zeon fully because she's a royalist. And Haman's just too smart. And that leads into Double Zeta. I won't talk about Double Zeta much. Yeah. At the end of Zeta, essentially, like I said, half the crew die. The war's at a stalemate. The Titans are gone. But Axis Zeon takes over. And that's what leads into Double Zeta. Char vanishes. We think Char's dead at this point. Char, at this point, after the end of Zeta, we don't see him again until Char's counterattack, which means there's a huge right turn that we don't see coming. He's not in Double Zeta at all. Double Zeta is about completely different characters, except for it's goofier. It's a little more lighter in tone, but you get a lot more cyber new type stuff. And eventually Haman Karn meets her end, and Axis Zeon collapses. That's 0087 and 0088. We now move on to 0093. So we're now 14 years after the 1 year war, about 5 or so years after the Grips conflict. The Earth Federation has kind of cleaned up their mess after the whole Titans fiasco.
Yeah.
But now, and then Axis Zeon falls after that. So the Earth Federation's back kind of in control. This is where we open Char's counterattack.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you context in between. Also, Hayato dies in war in
I assumed because he's not in the Char's counterattack.
Yeah, Hayato dies in Double Zeta in a colony drop on Ireland, and
just dropping colonies from space, huh? That's
Axis Zeon. Like Zeon just dropping colonies.
I feel like if just like one of those happened, it would destroy the planet.
There are at least 4 or 5 different space drops that happen on Earth throughout Gundam.
How do they fall to Earth? They're too far away. Things don't fall in space, first of all.
Well, they catch them in the gravity well and then just drop.
But how do they drag the colony to It's weird.
They put boosters on it and everything. They essentially launch it towards Earth and then let gravity do the work.
Anyway, Char's counterattack.
Char's counterattack, the first full motion, first full film of the Gundam franchise.
Yeah.
1988.
Looks great, is dumb, is what I wrote.
A little bit. A little bit.
It's a lot of it, in my opinion. And I think that
It does look great, though.
it does. Oh, yeah, the battles are cool. They suffer from the same problem as, like, they start off really great, and then by the end, it's just everything's blowing up. And there's no weight to anything. I feel like I really enjoy it when it's, like, a duel of, like, one Gundam versus one other mobile suit or whatever.
Like the new Gundam versus the Sazabi.
Or whatever. But, like, I think those end up being really cool in any sort of context, whether I'm watching Mobile Suit 8th MS Team or I'm watching Gundam Wing. Those are the ones that have weight or whatever. But when it's just like Amiro's using his beam rifle and he's blowing up like 5 dudes, I was like, it just feels like nothing for some reason. I don't think it's not, or it doesn't feel like nothing. I'm just like, it's fine. It's like, you know what? I'll compare it to is like, if like in a lot of episodes of The Mandalorian, it's like a lot of people pretending to shoot at nothing, and like the music and the choreography kind of gets you through it.
I will say, like, in this, there's a little more weight because in some situations, you're watching some of these guys like calm in and then get killed. And it's like, you know, there are people getting wiped out in this. And again, you're sitting around like, what are we fighting for? We've had like 15 years. Have you not figured this out?
Yeah, there are.
And that's kind of what
there are great battles, and like the designs of the mobile suits get better.
Oh, the Jigan.
It is filled with characters that are completely nonsensical.
Oh, and absolutely obnoxious.
Not even obnoxious, but like there's not a real person like that. Or if they are, they'd be a lunatic. The obvious one is Quest, who
one of the most
on a whim
unloved characters in Gundam history.
Who on a whim joins so she can have sex with Char Aznable. They don't say that. That's what she's doing.
She's simping on Char because at this point, like I said, Char has vanished since the Grips conflict, where he used to be the head of the AU.
She then goes. I need to say all this at once because I need to
get it out.
She then goes on to kill her father, kills a man in a mobile suit. Like her reaction to death is like nothing that you would ever see.
She's a little sociopath.
Yeah. Oh, it's not even she's a sociopath. It's the writers just like didn't think of it. Like it's not. She doesn't be like, I don't care if they die or if they live. She just like kills them. It's like or whatever. And I was like, I've never seen. I've talked to like friends of mine who were like snipers in Iraq or whatever, like had to kill people or whatever, and like they're like, he talks about like the rationalizations and the stuff that you do in your mind to be like it's okay because you're just following orders or whatever.
Well, this is also, I think, like the idea of a mobile suit is such a distancing thing.
Yeah, you're inside a suit of armor and they're inside a suit of armor.
Yeah,
there was no
you're
one
not
inside
looking
that.
at anybody.
Yeah,
when she blasts the hull of that ship and kills her father and those Federation officers,
she has no idea.
She has no idea. She's just like, yeah, I did it for.
But I feel like
even
if she did, she wouldn't care.
Right. Well, her father's an asshole.
And then she dies trying to protect Char again. Yes. I think as well. Also, a few other, I'm going to say this real quick, a few other dumb things about this. Char tries to launch an asteroid at Earth at the beginning of this. They then give him an asteroid.
Because he gives him a suitcase.
Because he's so trustworthy.
Yeah. Well, he said he would demilitarize. He's like, hey, everybody.
You can't trust the right-wing space fascists.
Yeah, you can't trust this blonde Aryan man in a Prussian outfit and cape come in, sit down with all you suits, and
who gives like these big speeches to like his army of devout followers.
I do love the hologram speech thing where it's like he's got his hologram out in space.
Yeah,
that's really cool technology. But like it's that meme about like the guy with his fingers folded saying, "You give me this and I give you this." If you've seen that,
yeah,
it's that like I give you a suitcase full of gold, you give me access. I promise I won't do anything.
Yeah. Why anyone would trust that man after he almost committed a genocide? It'd be like Hitler, like is like, I'm gonna kill all the Jews, and then like you managed to stop him from killing all the Jews, and then he's like, I won't do that again. In fact, I'll disarm, but all I would like is a bunch of Jews, please. I would be like, okay.
I would like a couple of nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but don't take this personally. Hathaway Noah is an idiot in this. He also kills somebody for no reason.
Yeah, no one talks about that he kills Chan like that. He murders her.
Yeah.
Because she's the one that does the kill shot that kills Kess, right?
Yes.
And he So
just like flips out.
so at this point,
Like you should feel ashamed of that.
yeah, and I feel like I hope that the movies touch on that, like, because I think they mentioned like, oh, you shot down an enemy. I think they're talking about Kess because
Oh yeah,
I don't
know they are.
yeah,
for
because
sure.
they're not talking about Chan. Like, for all they know, Chan just got killed in the crossfire of the fight against Neo Zeon.
And Chan was like a friend of Amuro.
They were like lovers.
Yeah.
like she was.
Were
just,
they?
well, as much as Amuro can love somebody.
Japan doesn't understand.
As much as Amuro can love somebody, he's pretty aromantic and asexual.
I think that's my point. Is like about all of it. But
So originally there was again supposed to be a longer love affair with Sayla, but that got dropped entirely. So in Zeta Gundam, they brought in this character called Beltorchica, which is
that's
another.
a hell of a name.
Yes. I'm sure you've noticed Gundam names are a lot of fun.
Some of them are all right. Like
Some of them are just
Kenneth Slag.
Yeah, some of them are really silly, and I love them. There's a great Twitter page called Gundam Names, and they just go through like stuff that pops up and say, that's a Gundam name.
Yeah.
They bring in this character named Beltorchica, who is...
And they look at each other passionately for several episodes, and then
they make
nothing
out.
happens.
Like it's kind of a build up, but she's kind of manipulating him a little bit. It's
Oh,
kind of mean.
no.
It's a little. She's a little like gaslighting Amuro a little bit. Like, Amuro, go kill more. And he's like, I really don't want to. And they're like, you need to
But
kill
you're
more.
supposed to.
You're the. You get
Let's get back to how dumb Char's counterattack
Okay,
is.
but they cut that character out as well, and then replace it with Chan, I guess.
My point is, I feel like as I was watching Char's counterattack, all these things kept happening that just stopped me from enjoying it. I love the animation. It looks so sleek. The new Gundam is like 8 kinds of cool. I remember, I think I said on a previous episode, I don't like overly stylized Gundams. We'll get into some of that with Hathaway. Although I think it kind of...
When you mentioned earlier about like a lot of edges and things, all I could think about was the
You were like,
the
Rob-
Penelope.
Rob's not going to like this. Like,
I don't know if I like it.
yeah, well, like it's sort of like a World of Warcraft carrier where the armor's so big and the sword is comically large. Where
Yeah.
like I lose a sense of
It
realism.
starts to look like Warhammer a little bit.
Yeah.
you start to look at those like Space Marines.
But I think like the new Gundam and all the new Zakus that they have, they're all really cool and they're edgier, they're faster. I like to believe the
and they're pretty
technology
stripped
has
down. Like
Yeah.
they're like all the Gigants.
I love that they have Amuro has the things that he fires from here, like these they launch and they fight for him.
Funnels.
In fact, a lot of them have those, but like his are particularly cool.
That's the thing that comes up in Zeta is the Psychomu system. Essentially, new types can command things psychically. That's what those are. They're funnels.
Yeah.
That's more like overly discussed in Zeta, but we're past that.
Yeah. And I would have. And
I really love the Zazabi. Char's mobile suit.
Yeah,
that thing looks
Is
slick.
it's the red one?
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty
These
awesome.
are always red.
And I like his
Except for the Xeon.
his subordinate who also wants to get with Quest, but Quest doesn't want anything to do with him.
Guiney or the poor kid who gets. I forgot how much he's in it.
He's in it a good bit. His mobile suit's cool.
Yeah.
He's a cyber new type or whatever.
Yeah. He's the Jagged Doga.
There's a whole point where he like walks down to like some dilapidated city with Quest and he's like, he loves Sayla and this other woman. And he's like, I'm gonna go tell on you. And she leaves or whatever. I was like, I have trouble looking at someone who wrote that story and being like, do you really think this is gonna like resonate with people?
You're not wrong. A lot of people kind of, because Tomino originally wrote this, and Yoshiyuki Tomino is the creator. He's also who wrote the original novel for Hathaway.
Yeah.
So a lot of these are his personal choices, and a lot of people are kind of like, what were you thinking?
Yeah. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the
Tomino?
world I've seen, but I'm just like,
Right. It's still weird.
it's jarring and weird and character motivations that don't make sense.
Yeah.
Why does Char want to just... The bigger question is, why does Char want to kill everyone on Earth?
That is a debate that people have had, because it's like his justification is
destroying the environment.
Yeah,
The
is
environment,
like,
we gotta say the
we
environment.
need to leave Earth.
You are aware launching an asteroid to Earth will also be bad for the environment,
Well,
right?
it also goes up against the character he developed into in Zeta as Quattro Bagina.
And by the end of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, if you haven't seen those, at the end he's very much like, "Fuck, I don't care about Zeon or whatever."
The thing about where Char gets to now is why talking about him in Zeta is so important, because by the end of that, he has this whole speech he gives at Dakar at the Federation council, and is like, he hijacks the whole place and it's just like, pretty much says, like Earth is our home. It's our cradle. We now have gone beyond the cradle. We need to go further out and let it heal from the damages of war and mankind, and we need to leave space. Or leave Earth and go to space. Like, let it rest. This is our home. Let the mother planet rest.
Yeah.
And eventually Char comes to the end like, fuck it. If you guys won't do it, I'll just kill you all. Fine, I'll just ethnically cleanse Earth, I guess. And it's like, he becomes so extreme that he, becomes a lunatic.
Yeah.
And that's why Amuro is just like, Char, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Like, why have you become this?
I would like to point out, just because you reference another character talking to another character about how crazy that character is, does not make it justified.
No, but I think that there's a little bit of like, while you're sitting there going like, what's all this about, is a little bit like you're supposed to feel that way.
Yeah.
Not entirely.
And I am just
but you're a bit like, how does a man like Char Aznable, from his beginnings, end up this way?
Yeah.
Where he's like this loved, cult of personality, this leader, but eventually ends up coming to the most rash and violent decision.
Yeah, and like the level of genocide gets to such a level. I'm like, how could anyone think that's a good idea?
How
like
deluded have they made the people of space?
At least previous fascists were like, we need to only kill one group of people.
Yeah. Well, they avoid that, that's again the Titans. They're the ethnic cleansers. They're the ones like space noids are garbage and new types are dangerous. We need to monitor them or execute them.
Yeah.
So they're a little more on the ball fascists because they're Earth centric. But yeah.
Also, Char's counterattack ends with a big rainbow meteorite, and also it just ends. Like, what a smarter screenwriter would have done is because all the Xeon guys help him to try to push it away.
It's one of my favorite moments in the whole series.
It's cool. And then they undercut it by none of it means anything.
Yeah, it just kind of,
Willow.
But they stop Axis from crashing into Earth, and Char and Amuro go MIA, assumed dead. There is one point that always gets me real emotionally when I see that scene is the reinforcements from the Federation show up, because this has all been with Londo Bell, which is Bright's like little special forces group.
Cool to see Bright again too.
Yeah, Bright's in everything.
Yeah.
He's called in the series, he's called the Eternal Captain because he's pretty much in every series.
Yeah.
He will show up in Hathaway, I promise you, because he's Hathaway's dad.
Well, I've watched Hathaway, and he doesn't.
In the latter movies.
Oh, they're doing more?
It's going to be a treat.
Oh, because I was like, okay.
It's going to be a trilogy. Because there's 3 novels. There's a scene where one of the Gym 2s that come up fly by the screen, and one of them has Amuro's original Gundam shield, the little star pattern shield, the one that looks like a cross.
Is this in the movie? I don't remember this.
it's in Char's counterattack at the end.
Oh.
It's very brief, but you see like these Gym 2 reinforcements come by, and his shield just flies in front and goes by. That always makes me a little emotional because
cool.
it's like a little tribute, But that's how Char's counterattack ends. Hathaway is just sort of like, well, I did a war crime.
But Char's counterattack, it just kind of felt like a big thud for me.
Yeah.
Like, it looks great, really. And like at the end, they're all pushing. Like, what a smarter screenwriter would have done is at the end, when the asteroid is coming, they push it away.
Which they do.
But do they? Because they all die. Well, and then it's about to kill him, and then like the spirit of Layla or something comes and saves the day. And I was like, this is the equivalent of, this is like, you know how in Lord of the Rings people complain about like, why don't you just have the eagles fly the ring?
It's an eagle moment.
It was like
this swan moment.
But what happens is like, but in Lord of the Rings, because that defeats the purpose, is that like even the eagles couldn't resist the power of something so evil, but little tiny Frodo could.
Right.
That's the
justification.
It just does it and just saves the day. And I was like, this is dumb, and I hate this.
It's not my favorite thing, but it happens.
I think what would have been cooler is that like the forces of Xeon betray Neo Xeon or whatever, which we should probably say like they're new fascists, or not the old fascists or whatever.
Well, what's the saying? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But would have been a cooler idea is that even those people have like a change of heart, like, we can't do this.
Well,
and
they do,
and they push. But like, it's not what you're about; it's how you're about it. Like, and like they all push it back slowly themselves or whatever, because that's not what happens. Because they're burning up as the asteroid is re-entering Earth's airspace or whatever, and like some of them are like, he's like, get out of here, your mobile suits can't take this, you'll die, and they just kind of, some of them just
some of them get burnt up.
What would have been cool is like maybe one or two of them do, but eventually they do it, and Char's like, no, and then Char is like, I don't know, arrested at the end or whatever. Like I feel like that would have been a better ending.
Yeah. And I mean, like, they kind of leave it open a little bit, because you're like, you're not really sure.
It just ends. I don't know what happens to Amuro. I don't know what happens.
You're supposed to
Char.
assume that they both died, and so that's like
are we? Because I don't.
Yeah, kind of, because it's sort of like this thing where it's like their rivalry led to such a tragic end.
Put a finer button on the end.
Yeah,
like they're just.
It's not my favorite, but it's kind of just
it's like watching.
I guess
It's like watching Training Day, and then at the end, instead of like the big speech, like King Kong don't have shit on me speech, they just like they cut that speech out of the movie, and then we just cut to black and assume like we assume Ethan Hawke won or whatever. Like,
don't worry about it.
I don't know. But I didn't enjoy it as much, mostly because of those stupid character moments that just don't feel real.
That's kind of universal for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think it looks gorgeous, and I love
the way it's paced, but the characters are so.
It was the first time when I saw one of those big battles, and I was like, that's kind of how I remember Gundam being. Mm-hmm. It was kind of the first time they developed the style.
Because in the original series, it's mostly pretty one-on-one.
In fact, I would imagine that by the time they were doing Zeta or whatever, that's probably when they got the style.
Because, like, it's advanced technology beyond advanced technology. So, like, one thing they cut out of that's in Zeta is a bunch of, like, prototype stuff. Like, I'll send you a list of all the crazy Titans mobile suits that exist, because it's a bunch of wacko stuff.
But when I saw Char's counterattack, it was the first time I remembered, like, this is kind of how I remember it being and feeling. But the story itself was just so
not great.
Just not great. And I found myself by the end of the battle when they're just launching X amount of nukes and everything I was like, God, it's just overkill. I missed this. Is why I like. You say it's overrated, but it's the one I kind of go back to as like a great example of keep it grounded. It's 8th MS team when they just fight like 3 Zaku's in a jungle and it feels like a victory. Yeah. Whereas here I'm like, is it a victory?
So much. Yeah. Well, that's the question. I think that's what the director is also getting.
So let's talk about Hathaway, because you just revealed it's going to be a trilogy. Kind of might have changed one or two things about.
So Hathaway,
because I was like, again, Hathaway also just ends, and I was like, oh, but it's okay. So it's going to lead to something.
This is a review, y'all. Hopefully, we're coming for this for the new movie that just came out. Yeah. Hathaway is based on a series of novels that were written by Yoshiki Tamino, written by the original.
Did he write
guy.
Like, were these always novels?
Yes,
was Char's Counterattack
Char's Counterattack was originally a novel.
And what about the original?
No, the original series. He wrote a novelization of the series later.
That's afterwards.
Yeah, it was kind of like my own point of view sort of story. Yeah. The novel's kind of not like kept with because Amuro dies in it.
Well,
like Amuro gets
this
killed.
Guy doesn't respect any canon.
Amuro gets killed randomly by like a Zaku with a bazooka. Like just hits him in the back in the final battle. And it blows the Gundam up, and it's like, oh. Okay.
Boo.
But he has to ignore that because the character keeps showing up. So,
but I mean, like it's probably more accurate to like war, where you could just die. But like, anyway, let's talk about Hathaway.
So Hathaway's based on a series of novels called Hathaway's Flash. It's based on the character of Hathaway Noah, who is the son of Bright and Mirai and all that.
Yeah, I noticed when I felt good when I felt proud. Like I felt like if you were there, you'd have been proud of me. Because I was like, wait a minute. It's like his name's Bright Noah and his kid's name's Hathaway. That's just, I knew that before they even introduced it or whatever. And I was like, I kind of got the interconnectivity of it all.
So it's the story. We're now 15 years, I think is what they say. 15 years after Char's counterattack.
12 years after Char.
12 years. 12 years after.
X amount of years after. Since humanity has gone to 100 years.
100 years.
And since we've gone to space.
We finally are in like 01. Like the, I guess what they call the 1000s or something.
Yeah.
Their federation kind of like, they won again. So they're still kind of in charge.
Yeah.
But they are members of the hierarchy are now getting assassinated and wiped out by a group called Mafty, led by a mysterious terrorist Mafty Navier Aaron.
Yeah.
Who
is going to be the next Char Aznavour.
That's what he's really popular. People really like him.
I think it's good to say that he's probably a little more level-headed than Char. but we're debating shades of black.
Right. There's a
way.
great moment in the movie, and there's a review that was out, I think, through AV Club, where they talked about this, talking about the idea of someone who thinks themselves a hero but comes from absolute privilege, that they think they know what's right. It's the scene where he's in the taxi cab in Davao in the Philippines, and the guy's like, you know, these hunters, these Federation hunter people suck, right? I wish Mafty would do something. He's like, well, Mafty is doing something. He's like, that guy wants us all to go to space. He's a lunatic.
We can't afford to go to space.
Yeah,
We're
I'm trying
poor
to
people.
I'm trying to pay for my family.
It's the it's the example of like a Ben Shapiro or like a, I don't know, like maybe like for Ronnie, like a Newton Gingrich being like, if black people want to have better life, they should pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Like, we don't have time. We don't have time
Go to space.
We don't have time for bootstraps. Like, we're poor. Like, it's an argument made from someone who has no idea what it's like to live
right.
in
Well,
those people's
it's
shoes.
that disconnection between someone who's got these high level concepts of the future, and I'm like, I'm trying to get a paycheck. Like, I can't think 1,000 years down the line.
So you're bringing up my big criticism of the only real criticism I have of the movie, which is why does because he's Noah, he's Bright Noah's son, Hathaway Noah,
and
we
he's
see
the
him,
same Hathaway from Char's Counterattack.
And we see him, we see him in the previous movie, and he's kind of an idiot, but a well-meaning idiot.
He's a kid who grew up in privilege and doesn't know any better, and got spirited away by this young woman he fell in love with who didn't care for him.
So here's my problem with he
now he's in his mid-20s.
He's like
the leader of a terrorist organization.
His dad is like
as you do.
His dad, as you do. It's the equivalent of like a white kid selling pot in college.
Well, it's equivalent of like an Eric Prince or something, like a rich wealthy guy who gets his own military.
He's like Jared Kushner.
Yeah, he's like I'm I think I know what's right, so I'm going to be in charge.
My point is the movie never like sticks on that point that maybe he's an idiot, kind of. Like, maybe he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He
does have some moments where he's questioning, like, are my tactics right? What is the right thing for me to do?
But they never, and I'm maybe because it's a trilogy, they'll get to some of that later. But I really feel like in this movie you should be like, because let's talk about the opening. Yeah, because the opening is kind of why he's here, essentially.
So
he's on a big space flight coming back to Earth.
That's full of Federation high command.
Yeah, it's full of like it's like the president's cabinet.
It kind of opens like a Bond movie. Like this kind of has the vibe of a Bond movie a little bit.
Yeah, they're all getting like fancy space drinks and fancy face dinners.
They got my little cocktail cup that has a little plastic covering over it to have their whiskey sours.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And we meet a bunch of like fancy Federation cabinet members and stuff. And the only 2, 3, or 4 people who they're not cabinet member are him, and we have a girl named Gigi Andalucia.
Yeah.
You talk about Gundam names.
Captain Kenneth Slag,
who immediately tries to like woo her.
Yeah.
And then when he gets shot down, tries to woo the stewardess.
Well, everyone's just kind of like, they're all here, and then there's just this mysterious, like, ethereal blonde woman who's just kind of like vexing everybody.
I'd also like to point out how good some of the animation is. Like, they took the time to animate their hair.
Yep, because they're in zero G.
They're in zero G.
Yeah.
There's no gravity, so like their hair's just floating around.
And
or whatever.
Captain Slag is a little bit older than he looks. He's actually a reverse. Like he's looks younger, but he's supposed to be older. And is like apparently married. Like she's like, you took off your ring, I noticed.
Yeah.
Because she's able to read everybody because she might be psychic.
Yeah, is she a new type? Because she does talk to him
the thing,
in her mind.
That's the thing. Like she is, but they don't talk about it because the movie wants to be a little more smart about it, not like really obnoxious.
That's fine.
So I
like to think she did it unintentionally. Like she thought it in her mind, and he's a new type, and he hurt her.
Right. Because we don't know if we do know that he is because he has these moments, but and so they're going down, and then
a bunch of terrorists storm on board,
flies in, and all these guys dressed as like jesters and everything with machine guns come down. By the way,
it's really incredible. Like a little thing while they're in space just lands, and they just enter the plane. And like nobody's able to just stop that.
Well, also they're escorted by 2 mobile suits with their like little flyers and everything.
I know, that's my point.
They land with another mobile suit.
Yeah,
it's one of the ones from Zeta.
Yeah,
and they just like drop off some terrorists.
And my point is, everything is weightless in space, so someone could literally get like put on a spacesuit, go outside, and just go like
Get out
and
of here.
push it away and push it away,
spy.
and they would just float into space forever and die.
Well, they
or
mentioned
whatever.
they mentioned like very briefly, like the pilots are just like, hey, we're going in like near this satellite, and they're like, I guess Mafty must have blew it up or something. So it like messes with their.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
we've totally forgotten to talk about the other dumb space science thing is the Minovsky particles.
Because that's a suspension of disbelief thing.
Okay.
That's like,
I was wondering
how does
what you
Superman
thought-
use heat vision? He does.
Yeah.
You have to
I was
buy
wondering
into that
what you thought about Minovsky particles because it's kind of
Well-
the big dumb question that answers everything.
Well, what Minovsky particles do, they do a couple things. They stop you from being able to see them on radar, is one, which is why we have to have close combat with these giant mobile suits.
Right.
When if we didn't have that, we would just shoot them.
we would just use
from-
drones and heat-seeking things,
Yeah,
but they
or
can't
something
do
like
that. And they allow
create
for
like the beam rifle technology and all that stuff.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah, it's not. That's not as ridiculous as like some of the other stuff in Char's counterattack.
Right.
So I was like, that's fine. Who cares?
So that's still active as the Minovsky.
Yeah,
and during battles they'll release Minovsky particles to make things more efficient for
Yeah.
mobile suit pilots.
And they so a bunch of terrorists storm onto the plane, and they're dressed like the Joker's squad.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
It's kind of a really cool design. They all just have like skull masks and
But
pirate
one of the
masks
guys,
and things.
one of the guys is claiming to be
Mafty.
Mafty Aaron, and at the time we don't know that Hathaway is Mafty.
Right.
We assume so. Like that scene plays differently now that because I watched this twice.
Well, it also plays differently the second time I've watched because I watched it again the other night, and I noticed immediately he's like, "I'm Mafty Aaron. I want money," and it's like, this guy's not a terrorist leader. He just wants
I kind
money.
of thought
He
that
just
too
wants to
because
rob these people.
I thought that too because I was like they would put more pomp and circumstance to if this is your real villain or whatever. But like he kind of acts like he might be like when I watched it I was like they play it as though Hathaway is like he might be Mafty,
got this
like,
big
but
pumpkin
he's
head.
not. You're Mafty. It doesn't make sense. So like I wish they would have put a button on that going in, but I appreciate why they
you
did
get it now because you find out later.
Yeah, but and he just totally like that guy. He just like some guy gets up and asks a question, and he just like murders him.
It's pretty brutal.
He was almost just like, I'm just gonna go to the bathroom.
And he's like, no,
and just blows him away. And it's a pretty bloody little fight. And then Hathaway just like springs into action.
that's where you kind of see like he's got some skills.
Yeah.
because he's doing like Black Widow moves on this guy. He like jumps around, like spins around.
And
on
I
the
liked
guy.
it because they're entering Earth's atmosphere. They're sort of fighting in and out of gravity.
I didn't think about that, but you're right.
Because you notice as he grabs the gun, like his jacket floats a little bit, and then he shoots the guy in the leg, and then he shoots the guy behind him,
Yeah.
or whatever. But as
really
they're coming into Earth, like the gravity is starting to kick in, essentially. Because it would have been cooler because you almost have like it's an Inception hallway fight where the hallway is bending or whatever around him. And he basically beats all of them, and then Captain Kenneth Slag, good for nothing, comes in and takes the credit at the end by shooting one guy.
Yeah,
or whatever.
The one guy is just like he's about to like blow him away. He's like, pal, like you did pretty good over there.
So let's speed through this a little bit.
They land in Davao. They're in the Philippines.
Yeah, I was like,
and
where is Davao?
Davao City is a place in the Philippines. They actually went and shot locations there. That little Jollibee restaurant they go to, that's an actual place.
Oh, cool.
So they like had scouts go out to Australia, to the Philippines, and actually film at actual locations, and then use that for the animation.
That was just an excuse for a work vacation.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. It's like let's go to like.
I need to model an experience.
Yeah, endless pockets. Let's go to Australia.
So,
because they find out those guys came from allegedly like a group of like
in
refugees
Australia.
in northern Australia, which is
they're
still
not
like
refugees. They're like it's like. So Mafty is a terrorist organization, and then another one inspired by them sprouts off.
It's a splinter. It's what happens in terrorism.
Yeah.
You get splinter groups that claim this. And
like
claim
if
that.
Mafty is ISIS, they're like Boko Haram or Al Qaeda or something.
But they're all kind of based out of Australia, which of course is still this landmark moment since the colony dropped on it.
Because earlier,
almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, several years ago they dropped a colony on it, and like it was annihilated. Like it's like a Hiroshima times 10.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting about
when
that.
they fly there, you still see the remains of it.
Yeah, because every time
that used to be Sydney.
Every time they mention Australia, I was like, "What is that? What are they talking about?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, Australia is like almost gone."
Australia is
now.
a giant lake, essentially.
That's crazy.
So they go to the Philippines, and
They
we
kind
find
of
out
detain everybody because they're going to question everybody about what
but
happened.
they keep the investigation bureau shows up and is like, hey, you're Hathaway Noah, you're Bright Noah's son.
Are these all Australians?
No, these guys are from like all over the space now because they're from different. They're from space colonies.
Yeah.
Because now at this point we've gone long enough that there are people who are born in space and all that. And but Sleg's like, I'm big boss around here. I'm in charge for the Federation.
Which ironically, Hathaway is not. Hathaway was born on Earth.
Yeah, he was born on Earth.
Yeah, because he has to be.
But he just
wants to destroy it.
He has using the Hathaway Noah thing. He's able to be like, yeah, my dad. We're kind of a strained relationship. I kind of killed somebody in the last war, and it was a big problem. But I'm just a botanist. I'm working with a scientist. We're just studying botany.
He kind of pulls the "My father will fire your father" card.
Yes, and they give him literally a card that's just like, this will pay for everything.
Space pot?
He could. He's a botanist. Like he might have space pot.
I'm sure the drugs have gotten a lot.
I
happen to. I too am a botanist of sorts.
But
because they go and investigate this little card, and it's like, yeah, it's not traced. You could buy anything with it.
Again, they just give him a card that lets him buy whatever he wants.
Yeah, and they put him in the most ridiculous, like future hotel.
Yeah,
with Gigi.
It's pretty cool. This is where I have to talk about this now. So they do the thing that I don't like, and they do it in every anime. They have the male character and they have a female character, and there's like a connection with them.
Right.
And like they're heavily implying like a romance of some sort, and then they just throw their hands up.
Right.
They imply it like
Again,
real
it's
heavily.
Really
later.
chaste. They're not sleeping with each other.
But it's just so like.
And he's also just kind of like, you're just mostly annoying, but I'm also like really curious about you. And she's going out with Kenneth because she's not getting anything from Hathaway. So
is she though? But by the end, it's like
she's kind of playing everybody.
Yeah.
Because you find out by
I think
the end
she's playing Kenneth, but like I think like
well, you do find out at the end that she's a call girl.
Yeah. Well, no, you know that.
From Australia.
You know that in the beginning because they say like all these people on this space flight are like higher ups and like she's 18. She's like, oh, she's like, I'm here. Which she's here like she's a mistress. Someone says like she's a mistress for
she mentions
somebody.
this Baron guy who like gave her an apartment in like Tokyo or something for free, Hong Kong for free, and it was just like
so I already knew that.
He's like that guy's like 80, and she's like money. What are you
gonna do, right? But like so
you can already see like the Federation sort of corruption, bloated corruption, and everything. But it's mostly just
having bureaucrats doesn't make you corrupt,
right? It's no
like,
different than the corruption you see now.
Yeah.
But
like I already knew that. But like so like later on in the movie when the it's on a fake attack. What's the best way to say it? It's a coordinated attack to move suspicion away from Hathaway.
Right. Because she knows he's Mafty.
Yeah, she figures it out.
Yeah, and he's just like, no, I'm not.
He goes, how dare you?
Yeah.
But yes, I am.
But yes, I am. I am the mysterious terrorist. Because there is that Bond moment where he's like, hey, what's your name, kid? And he's like, Noah. Hathaway, Noah. And then that really Bond like soul
Intro
song starts playing.
But so during the big mobile suit fight, which by the way is a great sequence, it shows like how like that's why I didn't like some parts of Char's counterattack in the end of the original. Is like these big battles. There's like thousands of mobile suits just blowing each other up, and it feels weightless. Where here it's just like three.
Yeah,
it's the Penelope versus one of their new Zaku kind of looking things, and another one.
The new Mafty thing is the Messer.
Yeah, but we don't see that till the end or whatever.
Well, that's what the one dude, Gammon pilots is a Messer.
Oh, is
that's
it?
the one that with the mono eye and the really like beak?
Yeah,
it kind of looks like the Jagadoga from the original.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I love the Messer.
But like, so like
I want to get that model kit really bad.
That fight is kind of scary.
Yeah,
and like there's explosions happening. A lot of people die.
I actually wish it was a little more like visceral, but it's pretty
well
because like
they take the opportunity to show it all from the ground.
Yeah,
it's mostly their perspective.
I love that sequence where like they're working everything out. You know, he met with his intelligence guys at the Jollibee restaurant, and we also see the Jigans, the gym looking ones, like are now used to like dispense populations. Like there's a guy just like outside of the cockpit with a machine gun. And it's just like, because the only time you see those, there's like one that's like a firefighter, and it's pretty much like mobile suits have now like been used for just complete civil control.
Yeah. That's what he says. Like he's walking through like a big roundabout and he sees one. It's like, God, they're using it for civilian control now. Just like,
And that's-
it says like police on the side of it or whatever.
And they're armored like police.
I appreciate that because cops have tanks now.
Yeah.
They have
It's a
giant
perfect
armored,
escalation.
They have giant armored cars. So of course, if they had giant robots,
Mafty says ACAB.
yeah. But no, but during that big fight, they have like an embrace, like a hug, and like I don't like this whole thing of like the Japanese don't understand romance. Like I'm just kidding, Japanese listeners, if there's any out there,
Or just in general.
or just in general. No, if you're a French listener, I mean it. No, but like. I feel like I'm tired of this like weird will they won't they like make a decision or don't. I'm tired of implying a romance
Right.
every anime
But
does it.
like you said, now that you know this is
Full Metal Alchemist does it
Right.
with
Winry
Edward
and-
and Winry
yeah.
or whatever. And
again, you don't see a lot of these series where it kind of. But I don't. You also get the idea that Hathaway's still hung up over quests. All these
Yeah,
years later,
but
he's still.
why?
Well,
she's the
'cause
worst.
he met her and fell in love with her when he was too young, and then it was like trauma bonded. Like he watched her die and all
Yes.
that, and so.
But
he's-
Gigi Andalucia is like, mwah.
Right. She's a beautiful blonde woman and always is accessorized very well. She looks like a Gucci model.
Yeah, he sees her boob. He sees her boobs at some point later.
And mostly it's just like, okay,
yeah,
I got to go keep doing terrorism.
the most realistic male response to seeing boobs.
Yeah.
I think we can.
Well,
all
Kenneth
agree.
is the one who's just like, hey, lady, what's up? I'm the big boss man
Yeah,
around here.
he's Hathaway's too aloof. He's too slimy.
Right.
Like they're both like.
Well, I love the sequence after the battle, the first battle, in where, I mean, like, whenever those machines hit each other, you see the sparks come out, and the sparks are just melting things.
Yeah.
And it's like dropping fire everywhere. This is the first time you really get a sense of like, mobile suits are terrifying. They're giant monsters, essentially.
Yeah, like
And
one of them is like a death machine.
Yeah.
If like an army of them could destroy a planet.
Zeta does more of this because in Zeta you get more battles in occupied areas, and like there's a battle in Hong Kong that happens in the middle of the series where there's so much civilian casualties, and they're like, we got to reduce damage, and the Titans don't care because they're like, we don't really care
They're
about people.
space fascists.
Yeah.
They'll kill everybody.
But like you get that moment where you see Gammon like piloting the thing and they're firing missiles and they just go down and hit the city, and he's just like, damn it, this wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
There's that great shot where Hathaway goes through the window and you see that beam just go through the other hotel. It's really good.
I'm kind of like, when I heard him like we should try to
Minimize damage.
minimize civilian casualties. I'm like, yeah, but that's your whole thing here.
Well,
They're here to assassinate
Right.
the cabinet members. So I'm like,
and Kenneth's
you
team
really-
is a little gung ho on things.
yeah.
Eventually,
Oh yeah, they kill people too, because you can't. That's the problem with the thing like a mobile suit. There's no way you could ever operate one in a city like that
Yeah.
and like be certain no one's gonna die.
it's not like
the-
a drone. It's not like
Yeah, it's-
designed for anything. It's just
it's
you're
designed
firing
to-
guns the size of like a football field, and it blows up a
I don't know
a
if they're that
street.
big, but like they're big or whatever, and they're dangerous.
We see that scene where the Messer's gun falls out of the sky and just like impales into the ground
And kills a guy.
and it's like
A
the
guy's-
size of a building.
Yeah, or something like that.
Well, they catch Gammon. Kenneth is really smart because he comes in on horses. He's like, traffic's bad, horses work. It's a really cool sequence.
Oh yeah, I forgot
Because he's
about
like,
that.
we wouldn't be getting here in the traffic, so we brought horses, and it just gives him a
Yeah,
reason
at first
to
when
have
I-
a riding crop as a tool.
At first, when I saw that, I was like, "Why is he on horse?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense."
But it just gives him a reason to just have a riding
Do
crop.
you want to hear the best Gundam name?
What is?
Do you know what it is?
Is it in the movie?
Yes. Take a second to think.
Let me
before
think
I say
about it. It's not Galman.
It's Lieutenant Lane Aim.
Lane Aim. Yeah,
almost lame aim.
Lame Aim. And it's weird when they say it dramatically. Lane Aim. And it's like, yeah, no, it does sound bad. He kind of looks like Amuro.
Yeah, he does.
And there's a little bit of like an Amuro vibe about him. Because he's the pilot for the Gundam, but he's also like a kid.
Yeah. He
And
pilots the Penelope.
He pilots the Penelope, which is a ridiculous dinosaur looking like Stingray Gundam.
Yeah, it's not like a bipedal.
It kind of is, but at
or
this
it
point,
can be, but
at
it's-
this point, it can be anything because
Yeah.
they like have this like ability to fly anywhere. So it's like because it used to be like mobile suits just had to boost They can't keep flight because it's wasting too much gas. But now they can just like we're so far into the future of the future, they can just do atmospheric like flying around like jets.
Yeah.
Or they use those little riding scooters.
Well,
that
when you're in
Bob
space,
guys.
you don't have to worry about that.
No.
A little push will send you that way forever or whatever. But they're not. They're on Earth. So, you can't do
So
that.
he meets up. He goes to the beach and meets up and gets in a very cool, like kind of Chris Nolan like boat spy scene. Like
Yeah.
a kid comes and picks him up.
They're just off the coast when that happens. I'm like, someone's going to see you.
Well, he really.
Go further out.
This is a quick little side. I just want to bring this up because I just noticed this time. So Hathaway, first time you ever see Hathaway is in Zeta, and he's like 10 years old. And it's during the Hong Kong battle I was talking about. So he's there with Mirai, his younger sister, and him. And there's a battle that breaks out between the AUG and the Titans, and he gets thrown off a boat into the ocean and almost drowns. There's a moment where the kid says, "They told me that you don't like being around water." It's a very brief little thing that he would be still traumatized about that because he almost got killed in the mobile suit fight as a child.
Oh, yeah.
But that's in Zeta. So
I
that's
probably would have appreciated that if I had seen that.
yeah, I was just like, it's just a quick little throwaway line. But he meets up with the other members of MAFTI and goes to Australia. They charter a plane and go to Australia, and they're working out this plan. Because apparently Kenneth's forces went to attack Owen Pelly where those other MAFTI guys were.
Yeah, in Australia.
Yep. So they go to close to Australia. Well, it's Australia. And that's where they've got like their base hidden in the swamp and everything.
Yeah.
And they're building the other one, the other Gundam, which is, I still can't pronounce it, the GG.
I can't remember.
It's the GG. It's kind of a Chinese syllable. But I like this design a lot more. It's a little more traditional.
Yeah, it's a little more just understated.
Yeah.
They get like, I feel like people, like I said earlier, like when a lot of Gundam designs, they tend to get very carried away, like with adding lines and like wings and edges and like extra.
I'll have to
stuff on the
I'll have to
face.
show you the design of the Zeta Gundam, or at least the Mark II, which is the Gundam that starts in Zeta. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
It's both advanced and completely stripped down
I
and
want
simple.
form and I want function. That's why I like that's why I like the Gundams in.
8th MS team.
Yeah, well, they're pretty much the traditional
Yeah.
style Gundams, but it's why I like the Gundams in Gundam Wing, is because they're unique and they have a style and they're each kind of their own little signature, but they all are
Functional.
pretty functional.
Until you get to Endless Waltz, where they literally have giant angel wings, and
Yeah.
it's like, what is this?
Yeah, you're probably right.
Or the heavy arms has like guns everywhere, and it's
Yeah.
just like, that's cool. It's also stupid.
Yeah.
But so is Gundam Wing. It's cool and also stupid.
Yeah, but so like they get a little carried away. But let's get back to
Let's get back, yeah.
They basically the big third act, which I guess I was surprised because I thought this was just gonna be one movie, and I was
No.
like it's gonna be about like Hathaway and his political awakening and going against Earth. And then I was like, oh, it's a rescue mission, kind of.
Yeah.
They don't know it's a rescue mission because they put Gauman,
Which
They
it
put
sounds
him
like
in-
they're saying cowman sometimes. It's not a good name.
Yeah, they put him inside the Penelope,
Right,
as a
as a
hostage,
hostage.
essentially.
Yeah.
Which Lane Aim doesn't like. I laugh every time. I
Lane
say it.
Aim.
Lame Aim is what I want to
Well,
say.
also Kenneth like interrogates him a bit, and
Oh, yeah,
he kind of
tortures him.
he tortures him a little bit. Like
he
he
slashes
slams his
his
head on the
face
thing
on
and
the
everything.
table.
He's still using that riding crop.
Yeah.
He realizes at that point, he like puts everything together, usual suspect style. He's like, wait a minute, Hathaway is MAFTI, and he has that great moment where he's just twisting that riding crop. He's just like, MAFTI Navia here. And he's like, I'm gonna, because they have that scene where they talk to each other at the diner, at the like
Yep.
cafeteria, and he's just like, yeah, I'm the guy who's gonna take his head, and it's just like,
And he's just like, cool.
Yeah.
He's just like eating.
he's like,
I wish Hathaway would emote a little more.
yeah,
He's a little.
one note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's a terrorist, so
Yeah. Terrorist leader.
He might be a sociopath.
Yeah.
But like, so like,
Because his whole thing and what this series is going to be about is he's caught between two worlds. He's caught between what Amuro taught him, and he's caught between what Char taught him. And he's trying to decide, because there's a brief little moment when he goes to space in that really cool launch sequence
goes to. Oh yeah, no, I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
where we first see the GG.
Yeah, they have to use a space shuttle.
Yeah.
It feels like we're past space
You
shuttles.
still need a space
now.
shuttle to get past gravity.
Like you have giant robots, but like we still got to have a big space shuttle take
Yeah,
you into
well,
space.
how else are you going to get
That's
up
all right.
there?
Yeah, go ahead.
He even mentions like one point when gravity starts taking over, he's like, damn gravity, I hate it here.
Oh, one thing that I thought was really cool. It's like it's not even an action sequence. It's just it's a cool idea that could be feasible. When he gets when Lane Aim doesn't like the fact that Gammon is inside of his mobile suit because it's a crutch,
Right.
essentially. That no, you won't be killed because they would kill their own man. By the way, terrible idea. If they're as terrorist as you think they are, they might very well kill their own man.
Yeah,
Like,
there's aside from the cabinet member and his wife that get murdered in the start and a few like casualties, not a lot of death in this movie. They're
Yeah.
kind of keeping the
I don't-
characters stacked.
I don't know if Hathaway has the stomach for it, frankly.
Well, just the series. I mean, like you see a lot of like people like vanish in fog and fire and smoke.
Oh, no.
But I mean, like characters, you don't see. No one gets killed off in this.
Yeah, but
movie.
Hathaway's mission is to kill the
Yeah.
cabinet members.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I think.
I think you're going to see more of that in the next movie. I think it's going to get a little more graphic from what I've read.
All right, fair enough. But
There's gonna be some pretty brutal beam deaths.
Yeah, the sequence is he gives Gammon back to him because he wants
Yeah.
a fair fight. He wants to beat him on his own merits, and they drop him.
Yeah.
and he
And
has
he's
to
got a
catch
flashlight.
him. He has to catch him as he's falling.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty
sequence.
cool.
And Hathaway even mentions like, Lane Aim, you're an honorable guy. He's like, it's my Gundam, my fight, and he calls him an imitation Gundam. He's like, no, I'm the Gundam pilot, and Hathaway's like, whatever, homie. It's
Yeah,
just
cool.
fight.
Yeah, the fight
The fights are very like,
kinetic.
yeah.
Is the word I would
you
use.
see a lot of just beams flying through and everything, and when they hit each other, it feels so like crunchy. And
I
like
like the fights. I just wish we got
more of them.
a little. Well, the last one I was like, this is your third act. You should probably go for broke here.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's a Gundam versus Gundam fight.
I was
but-
getting a little tired of the quick blasts of movement.
Yeah.
Where they're moving really quickly, and I wanted some more hand-to-hand stuff. I still love it. It's one of my favorite things in the world. It's the first time Reaper uses his Gundam on Earth in MS Team.
Oh,
When he takes out the beam sword, and he was like, "Holy shit, these things are powerful."
Yeah,
it's a really great moment that kind of it's not a big fight.
Terry, the guy with the dreads.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
called like the Reaper or whatever.
Yeah, because his team
teams
just
always
keeps getting
die.
killed.
Yeah, but like
Terry.
but when he used that was really cool, and I was like, I wanted like some moments where like we're not focused on the big bombastic explosions or technology, but we get to focus on like a more intimate hand-to-hand ish.
So we
fight.
kind of get that with the Gauman fight when
Yeah.
he's up against those Gustav Karls.
Yeah. Poor guy, he could take it. He had no chance.
Yeah.
really.
Well, it's interesting. Like you see it unleash a beam saber, and it's very like thin. It's more realistic, but
Yeah.
that thing can still do damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of like the Gustav Karl.
I
It's
like-
a great name for a mobile suit.
I also
too.
I like the way. This is why I don't think he has the stomach for it personally, but I like the way that Hathaway wins.
Mm-hmm.
He just misdirects him. He shoots his beam rifle and lets go of it, and he thinks that's the Gundam,
Right.
and travels it that way, and then he just goes back to Australia.
and just
or whatever,
well,
and then they leave.
he missile spams him too, and then
Yeah.
that annihilates pretty much disables the Penelope.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Like he just kind of.
I was a little. I didn't hate it, but I was a little underwhelmed at
Yeah,
the end. I was just kind of like, I'm ready for like a bit. And I think when you told me, oh, it's a trilogy, and I was like, yeah, like this. Like, I thought this was one movie, and we were about like this terrorist guy, and I was like, we learned nothing.
He walks
I was
very
like,
badly animated on a boat, and that's it. Because a lot of people are like, the animation kind of just craps out by the end of the film.
I thought it was fun.
But I was like, yeah, it just kind of ends. And I do wish there was a little more closure. I don't need closure entirely because we know there's 2 more movies coming.
But when Fellowship of the Rings ends,
Right.
there is a coda where you have reached a
Right.
come down.
It's the same how I felt about the Demon Slayer movie, where it's like I wanted a better coda. I wanted a better ending note. This is a little more.
also, a girl comes up at the end and like sticks her face in his face. I'm like, is this the romance that they're not
Yeah, I
going to
don't know.
fulfill?
I love the designs of all the different MAF team members. Everybody looks
I
so
think the
unique and
character design,
multicultural.
yeah,
and-
character designs are awesome.
Yeah.
I even like a character like Gigi, or like Kenneth, or like I think it's Esmeralda.
Yeah.
with the red hair.
Yeah, the Emeralda.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah. They're all really cool.
She has that great sequence when when they finally go up to space, and she's trying to make sure the G hands on, and she keeps like knocking into it, and it's just like, oh no, oh shit.
Why did he make her do it?
She's like one of their more skilled pilots. Like Gauman's still captured, but she's a
why
skilled
didn't Hathaway do it?
because he has to be in the capsule in order to initiate the Gundam.
Couldn't he grab the thing and then be like, all right, now you come get it, and I'm gonna.
Everybody
that part-
everybody does their best.
That part just felt a little strange to me.
Yeah.
He is a skilled pilot.
Yeah.
He flies the Gundam like he knows what he's doing.
He's been ever since he was a kid. He must have really like snuck off snuck off camp and like got pilot
Yeah, because
training.
Char's counterattack is the first time he uses the
Yes,
Gundam.
first time he uses a weapon.
Also, the first time we see a ball in the series.
Is it counterattack?
I think so.
I don't remember a ball in there.
There was. They're like in the background.
Well, you see him in the movies,
Yeah.
like in the final battle. You see a bunch of balls there.
But yeah, I quite liked it for the most part.
Watching it a second time, it really was like it felt more of a movie to me. Like this actually feels like a film.
The only thing that bothered me was like those weird romances. Do them or don't do them.
Right.
But just stop trying to like.
It is a very anime thing, and when you're trying to make this mature film that has this very kind of Chris Nolan-esque like sleekness to it,
Yeah.
it's still very chaste.
I think my problem is like it should be masculine to say it, but like our society doesn't say it. I like a good love story. I think it can bring a story together and give you some not just more stakes, but give you some humanity.
Well, I think then they should have leaned in a little more that he's still hung up over Kess. That like this still haunts him.
Yeah, or something.
And how immature that is and how unnecessary that is. Because you get that little brief sequence where they reanimate the scene when Char and Amuro meet each other in the colony and start beating the shit out of each other.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And they reanimate that very briefly. It's really cool because it's like everything transforms around and you see Kess run towards
Also, you see the rainbow meteor
at the
end of
end,
Char's.
too.
And I think you see Amuro talking to him.
That's a really
It's like blink and you'll
really
miss
good
it.
moment because it's that new type ghost thing. You see his ghost pop up and this helmet fly off and say, he says the Grim Reaper won't wait for you.
Yeah.
And he's because he's like you're seeking a glorious death and you're seeking it on your own terms. And that it won't happen on your own terms.
I mean, I kind of side at the rainbow meteor because it reminded
you of Char's counterattack. Like, oh man,
my least favorite thing. But like,
but there was also a little bit of controversy about that because in the English dub, they didn't go back and just get Amuro's voice actor. They could have just done that. The Japanese one is still Amuro's original voice actor.
Oh yeah, because the voice actor in Char's counterattack is the guy from Death Note who does Light, like Yagami or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just get him from most voice actors have a little studio. They do it in their house or whatever.
But I like that it's still the same in the Japanese. I think it's still the same voice actor that Amuro started as back in the 70s and on.
Really?
Yeah.
70s?
Well, 79, 80.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty old by now.
Yeah, he's probably like, in his 60s or 70s, but he came in to just do that one little line. I think a lot of people were like, we wanted more of that, but you'll get more of it. Like, because you also see Char in like the newspaper clip. It's him with the arms outstretched doing the whole.
Oh, yeah, because they're saying he's going to be, that's the newspaper says he's going to be the next Char Asinable.
Yeah, and everyone's just kind of like, that may or may not be a bad idea.
A cool story.
Yep.
I'm excited to see where it goes.
I know where it goes, and I'm very curious how they'll play it out.
So have you read the original?
I've read summations of it.
Okay, so is it pretty close? Is this pretty close to the original?
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a little more stripped down, a little more modern, a little more like streamlined. It's
good. That's what I want. I don't want any more Char's
really
counterattack.
dark by the end of it. A lot of people thought that this series was unfilmable, and so now that we're here,
Whenever people say that, I just kind of roll my eyes. I don't believe it.
Also my one little complaint, because I think that it's worth. There's also, I noticed at the end, I listened through the whole last act. One thing, it has a really baller J-pop song that's that emo rock song that's kind of really good.
Yeah.
But at the end, there's a brief little shot. It's a photograph of Owen Pelly, the Mafty base, obliterated with a burned Federation flag, and it says 2 days earlier. So essentially, like that discussion they get about, like, oh yeah, we sent some forces out there. You get the idea that it's like when Sleg's forces went there, they just massacred the whole place, and there will be repercussions for that.
Oh.
Like there might have been a bunch of innocent people there, and they just bombed it.
That's not good.
No, it's not good. It's not good.
All right.
So that's been that.
This has been my journey through the Gundam verse,
and I will be glad to talk to you more about it as it goes on. I'm a Gundam cyclopedia.
I twisted Matt's arm, and he has to watch Naruto.
I'll check it out.
We'll do it because I'm probably
going
to do the sequels to this at this point.
Well,
whenever they come out,
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're in production at this point.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully, we'll get those sometime soon. Yeah, I'd be very interested, like, because you went into Hathaway now knowing a lot of the context. I'd be very interested, much like with Demon Slayer, if someone came in, just watched Hathaway and was still like, I kind of get it or I don't get it.
I feel like it would be more
because it's the end of so much lore.
They're very wordy movies.
Yeah.
especially this one in Char's counterattack.
It's very talky. It's very
They
politics.
operate on a lot of your previous knowledge to know every little reference and to be paying attention exactly and have the subtitles on and making sure.
That's why I wanted to talk about the Zeta and the Titans because in Haman Karn, because Char mentions it in that speech in Char's counterattack, the Tetons and Haman.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you don't know who the Zeta, you're like, who is that?
Yeah.
And it's like that's a whole
I do appreciate
arc.
that Gundam was kind of doing this interconnected universe before anyone else in
Yeah.
a weird way. I think
The reason why the series is so influential is because at the time, any animated series, A Giant Robot, was about a plucky young boy with a robot friend, and they were fighting aliens. And this is the first time they made a serious war drama that's not good versus evil. It's just survival.
Yeah.
And there are stakes and consequences for these things. It started what eventually is called the Real Robot series. There's Super Robots and the Real Robot. Super Robots like Astro Boy or like Tetsumo Z or things like that. Real Robots like Gundam.
Robotech and stuff.
Robotech, yeah. Robotech a little more different. Those both were kind of coexist with one another, but like Gundam is a world where it's like there are no aliens, anything like that. And of course, this series was so popular that it branches off into a bunch of other stuff, and so that's how we get Gundam Wing. It's in a different universe.
Gundam
Seed in a different universe.
G-Gundam.
G-Gundam's in a definitely different universe. 00 takes place technically in our timeline, AD.
Doesn't Unicorn as well?
No, Unicorn Unicorn takes place between Char's counterattack and Hathaway.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
Which, as much as I like Unicorn, it makes no sense now. It doesn't make any sense because the Hathaway.
Char's counterattack doesn't make sense.
Well, Hathaway is not going to talk about anything that happened in Unicorn.
Yeah,
because it's just like, what?
It was written before. though.
You had this entire war that broke out and all these powerful machines and all this weird stuff, and no one's talking. The thing is, like, Unicorn got so powerful in this weaponry that, like, it makes the Penelope look meek.
It's the problem with the revisionist, writing revisionist history, like filling in the gaps of your timeline. You will keep going back, and you will create more problems.
I do recommend Unicorn because it's really cool and it's beautifully animated.
Just
and
don't
it's a really
don't
slick
care
story.
about
Just
the canon.
think of it happening on a different timeline because there's like a second Char, and he's like a Char, literally a Char clone, and all this other stuff, and it's like, what? Who?
Yeah.
Why?
How?
Nineveh shows up again, and but all of that is ignored by the time we get to. But then again, it's supposed to take place like 2 years after Char's rebellion, and this is 12 years. Yeah. So, anyway, Robin, thank you for joining us a little bit for the world of Gundam.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all of it, but Char's counterattack.
Right, and I'll be glad to tell you more about it. And
Well, when the sequels come out, we'll definitely watch those and put those in an episode for sure. But
thank you so much.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for letting me nerd out for an hour
for this bonus episode.
We'll get a new movie soon, and we'll talk about it in an episode coming up.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy, man.